July 14th, 2023, and I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop. And on today's live stream, we're gonna do a sew with me. And I'm just gonna kind of show you how I take a pattern or an idea and adapt it to make it my own. And just encourage you to do the same. Now, this is pre-recorded, but put any questions you have in the chat and we are happy to answer them. And I'm hoping that I cover everything and that you don't have too many questions, but we'll see. So what I wanted to show you was we just released Spangled Kim Diehl pattern. We're publishing quilt patterns for Kim Diehl. She will be doing her books in the future with C&T since Martingale closed. But we're going to be doing one pattern per collection that she releases with Henry Glass. And I saw this pattern and I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. It's scrappy. I love it. And then we just started our Lori Holt Fat Quarter Club at Fat Quarter Shop. And I thought, oh my gosh, these two would look good together. Now, we do understand people are upset because we sold out of the club, but we are working with Riley Blake to do some special prints. Not special prints, but like a special print run for us so that we should be able to open up spots in a couple of months. But the whole point of this isn't to promote the club. It's more, I just wanted to show you what I'm gonna do. So this is the very first one that went out in July. So if you're in the Lori Holt Fat Quarter Club, you get 10 print fat quarters and 2 background fat quarters. So basically, I just thought, how can I convert this into this? So I'm gonna set these aside and just show you. And I have the pattern, I have the pattern with all kinds of notes all over it so you can't copy what the pattern is. Let me see. I'm gonna cover up some stuff. Okay. So basically, I just loved this pattern. Now, when you get it, you know, it comes really nice and pretty like this, but you know, I mark all over my stuff. So when I looked at it, you need 26 fat quarters. So I just figured I would take the fat quarters from July, August, September, and then, you know, maybe even keep going with it and make it bigger or whatever. But I'm just, so basically, if you have 26 fat quarters, just use that. And then it used 4 3/4 yards. So that would really mean that I would need 12 fat quarters if I'm using fat quarters. So I'm just gonna adapt this to work. And so what you do is you really just have to take it bit by bit. And so I just put the name of the pattern, the club, and I'm gonna be making 9 spangled dark blocks, 4 spangled light blocks, and then 6 spangled cabin blocks that are prints, and then 6 cream spangled cabin blocks. So when you look at the pattern, you're gonna make 9 print, 4 background, 6 print, and 6 background. And so basically the first thing I do is I looked at my fabric requirements and then what am I gonna make? And I decided I'm gonna start at the beginning of the pattern and I'm gonna work on this. You cut everything at the same time. So I went to my pattern and I decided here, I'm gonna start with 6 backgrounds just to start. So if you look, it tells you how many total you need. And that's why we give you total. So from 4 pieces, you need 52 total. So if you take 52 now, divide that by 6, you need 10. So I have converted that by just saying, I'm just gonna start with the first 3 months. I'm gonna have 6 of those background fat quarters because you're gonna get 2 in the first one. So I'm just starting with 6. And then I just figure out what I need to cut. So converted the backgrounds. And this is scrappy, so because it's scrappy, you know, there's a give and a take and you're gonna probably have some leftovers. So from your fat quarters, you need 26 of this fabric K. So that's 1 each. Well, I said I was gonna start with 30. I just did a round number. So, because you get 10 each. So 30. So if you take 26 divided by 30, you need, oh, sorry, ignore that. So you would only need 1 from your fabric K, but if you're doing 78 divided by 30, that gives you a little bit over 2, so I would cut 3. So basically, instead of doing the 26, I'm doing 30, which means basically I need to cut about the same as this. I could just go with the same number that's here, but it's whatever you want to do. You could cut more, you could cut less. And then the fabrics T, U, V, and W are right here, and those are considered a yard of fabric. Well, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to do scrappy. So I took the total number, so it's 104, divided by 30, because it's scrappy, so I've got 30 fat quarters. Then I wrote down what I need to cut. So from there, this is my design board with everything cut. Now, the reason you don't see an E is because I only had 2 background fat quarters, you only need that for some blocks basically. So I've already sewn them into blocks. So these are the blocks you're making. You're gonna make 9 of these and 4 of these. I wanted to make sure it worked before we got on camera. So, and they're really quick and easy. These is pretty easy. But what I wanted to show you, so the first thing I've done, and I'm not trying to complicate it for you, but I'm trying to show you that you can take any pattern with any fabric and make it work. You just have to start with fabric requirements. And since I'm starting with 30, that's similar to 26. You could just cut exactly like the pattern. I'm just trying to save a couple of cuts. And one thing different that I am doing is in Kim Diehl's pattern, this is Kim Diehl's pattern, she uses 4 backgrounds, like I said, and each block she mixes the backgrounds. I decided to just do 1 background because I don't have enough, I don't have 12 backgrounds yet to start. So I'm just starting with 1 background per block, and I think it looks good. So I tend to do that with backgrounds, is keep them the same within 1 block. So once I figure out the quantity, do you think that makes sense? So basically, once I figure out the quantity, I'm not going to cut the entire quilt because to me that's just too much. What I did is I looked at this block, and you're using S, P, A, U, B, C, X, V. I look at the letters on the diagram and I highlighted the letters in this block. So on this board, I've only cut to make this block, this first, the spangled star blocks. I have not cut to make the spangled cabin blocks because I think that's just too complicated. Let's just, start with the first block. So that's what I did. And then from there, I figured out, do I want to make my cuts bigger or smaller? And I write all of that down because some of the pieces I've adjusted, so you can see some of them I made larger, some of them I kept the same, and I'm gonna talk through that as I build the block and give you tips. And so basically what I'm showing you is to get something this cute, sometimes you have to put in the effort of sitting down and literally just doing this. It's kind of a pain in the butt to start, but once you get it and you get kind of a system, it'll start making sense. So we're gonna build this block. It's basically the same block except one has prints on the outside and one has background on the outside. So we're gonna make one with a background. With the print. And as I go, I'll tell you what I cut different. So the first, and then you also have to figure out how many you want to make per block. So for this partial spangled unit, we're going to use fabric S's, fabric P's, and some more fabric S's. And you're going to need 8. You're going to need 8 of these per block. And this one I kind of struggled with because in the block, I wanted to make this look nice and not have it chopped off, and I don't have paper for it. So I tried to come up with some tricks to make it work, and it did not work. So my original idea of cutting things bigger and trimming down did not work. So this is going in the trash because this did not work. But that's what I mean, is you have to play around with it. So what I'm gonna do, like I said, you need 8 per block. So these are all going to be 3 inches wide, which is what the cutting instructions say. I did cut them a 1/4 inch bigger. So fabric S, it was supposed to be 1 1/4. I cut it 1 1/2. Fabric P, I also cut a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew 8 fabric S's to 8 fabric P's. And you see I have all these stacks. Just take the stack and put it in a different a different area on your board, and then you won't even have to worry about being scrappy. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam. So I'm just using this 1/4 inch foot, and I'm just going to sew 8 of these together. And I'm just going to try to not touch the colors, but you'll see some of the colors end up touching. And then from here, I'm just going to use this thread cutter that's on my machine. They're called string blades, but Lori Holt just came out with a really cute bee one. So from here, I'm going to press toward the S. So this time I'm going to press directly according to the pattern. Set my seams. So I'm going to press towards the smaller side. And one of these I accidentally put two together that are the same size, but that's okay because we're going to be trimming down anyway. So I guess what I'm encouraging you to do is be inspired by what you buy and actually use it. Like if you sign up for a Fat Quarter Club, what are you going to do with it? Because if you just sit it in your sewing machine, you're probably just going to leave it there forever and then never use it. So try to use what you buy. So from here, this needs to be 1 1/4 because I'm trimming down, and I'm going to show you I'm trimming down because it really has to be exactly 3 inches when you put it on that triangle. So I'm going to trim this a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to keep them kind of all where I know where they are. Where when I go back to the sewing machine, I put them on the right side so I don't accidentally sew to the skinny side. And, you know, it took me, you know, 2 or 3 days. a little bit of time to figure out the kinks and how to get everything to fit together nicely. And I'm just going to show you the block. Hopefully it's interesting to you. Let's see. This is the one that I put the wrong one on. And since it's scrappy, it really doesn't matter. Okay, so from here, I need this to touch this small side. So these peas can go back on my board. I'm gonna put these in case I need them. And then I'm just gonna sew, oh, sorry. So then I just put SSP. So I'm just kind of keeping them on my design board to keep them organized. And when I sew, I'm just going to try to sew one that's not the same color. And then you're going to press to this out to the smaller side again. Now, one thing is you're going to see that I'm using more than the first 10 fat quarters from the July club. I have July, August, September, and I just cut them all at one time. And some of these, I think I cut too big at home, and that's fine. Or I might have mixed up my stash when they were in the car. And then what I would do here is make a note, like I need 8 per block. So just write all over your pattern so that you know when you come back to it. Now these need to be 3 inches by 3 inches. And they're 3 inches because I cut them 3 inches wide. And that's perfectly 3 inches. But this I made bigger because I didn't want to have, you noticed I didn't pin. I didn't want to have a perfect seam allowance. So I'm going to cut it to, I'm going to cut 1 inch away here. And I'm just, because I cut it bigger, and I'm going to cut it 3 inches. So it's basically trimming a tiny bit off. And then if you want, you can trim these sides to get the thread off if you want. But it's really important for this step for it to be exactly 3 inches. Like I said, I tried to make it bigger, like 3.5, and then put it on. I tried a bunch of different things. It just did not work. So my little trick to make it perfect didn't work, so I went with route 2. And that's just something I just do because I like to drive myself crazy. I think the reason I do stuff like this is I've been quilting for a long time, and I have to keep it challenging, right? Like I have to always come up with something new, or I'm just doing the same thing over and over. And so basically, like I said, I cut everything 1/4 inch bigger. Now this is just, it's going to add time to your quilt. But this is how I get my quilts, so really nice. And so this would look good with, you know, would look good with reproduction fabric, which is what Kim Diehl's fabric is. It would look good, you know, a two-toned quilt. You could do so much with this. And this probably is the hardest part of this block, is this little, or I guess the most time consuming. And when I'm doing this, the way that I will do it is I will do like 1 block a week or something, instead of trying to do, let's see, for this one you need 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 total. So I'll probably do like 1 a week, and then, you know, it just, you don't have to do the quilt all in one day. You can just do it over time, which makes it go a little bit easier. But I think, you know, I guess I want to just encourage you, if you buy something, figure out what you're going to do with it. And don't, you know, this is Lori Holt fabric, but I'm using a Kim Diehl pattern. So you can mix and match designers, looks, anything, just to make it your own. And another thing is you could just make it just like the pattern. You wouldn't have to complicate it like I do. Okay, now fabric A. It was supposed to be cut 3 by 5.5, but with my little, I took a couple of iterations of getting it right. I decided to cut it 3 1/4. So it's the same width, 1/4 inch taller. And I'm only gonna use one of the backgrounds. So I actually cut a couple of backgrounds. So I'm just gonna use these 4. So you need 4 per block. Yeah, 4 per block. Okay, so here, this is where design board. I'm going to use a design board. And I'm going to put the design board on top of here because it won't mess that up. But I'm not going to move it on my design board until I have it done. Now, one thing that Kim Diehl says in the pattern is you're going to be putting, like, the fabric is going to go up and down here with a line, here or here. And that's all in the pattern. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put 4 random ones. I'm just going to pick 4. I'm going to move these out of the way. And I have them straight up and down because that's how the pattern is. And this is the only way I can get it right. Is I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner. And then put it back. And then I'm going to talk about how I pinned to get it exact. And this one would be kind of, you know, sometimes you can put corner squares on and just, you know, guess where the line is, but this one, it's got to be exact. So then, okay, the most important part here is this bottom edge and the left edge needs to be perfectly aligned with that background. And I'm going to pin 3 times because this is the way I got it to be accurate. I don't want it to shift when I'm sewing. Now up here you can see it's too big because I cut it bigger. Don't worry about that right now. And I do apologize if I overcomplicate things. That's kind of a thing I do in my life. But I do, when I show you on camera, I want to show you what I really do. It does, all of the things I do take time, writing all this out, doing all the things. But this binder is great because I can go back and see what I did on different days. And then if I have notes to myself, they're in here. But you will be surprised how quickly your little notebook fills up. But on this, definitely, you know, pinning 3 times. You don't want it to shift when you're sewing. And then I'm just going to try to stitch directly on that drawn line. I'm going to change my foot to an open foot so I can see my seams. You know, as far as taking notes, it's great to do things like this and this because, you know, if I'm going to do one a week, I'm not going to remember what I did. Oh, I didn't put the date. That's going to drive me crazy. I did this on July 8th. I date everything. It's something my dad always did. But any kind of notes are going to be in here and in here so that I can always go back and you'll know where you're at. Now another thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to remove the pins yet on this. I'm just going to sew on the line, remove the pins after I'm completely done sewing. And the reason why is when you look at the front and the back, it's perfect. You don't see the front from the back or the back from the front. Okay, I'm going to remove the pins. And I wanted to point out, you know, you have your fabric going up and down. When it turns, it goes sideways. So if you accidentally put it on sideways and you turn this way, they're going to go a different direction. So that's why you have to have them face up, which is why I just keep the pattern right where it is so I can always find it. I'm going to trim 1/4 inch away. And I kind of looked at this to see if I could save this, but I think it's just too small and it's going to chop that off. So I'm just going to scrap those. You could, you know, use them into something, but I just ended up thinking I didn't think they would be great to save. And this one we're going to press towards the darker fabric. And I'm going to set the seam, press to one side. Now, I would say this pattern, if you just picked it up and started it, I think it's intermediate. Now, with all the things I'm doing, maybe it's a little advanced, and it took me years to get to this point. I mean, years to where I was comfortable doing this. And actually, Lori encouraged me to do this. But I will say one thing is, I'm going to show you what it looks like if you don't set your seam. So I'm not going to set my seam. See, it's not as straight. Look at that. Ugh. So you've got to always set your seam. Okay, so then they're there right here. Now what I'm going to do is do the same thing. And remember, they have to go up and down like the pattern. So I just am kind of looking to see to make sure I don't get the same print. And I don't think I have the same print. Okay, and then you draw your line this way. And you know what would be good? You guys could comment and tell me what you think your favorite all-time pattern is. Mine is probably Quilty Fun, just because that was the first time that we did a row quilt, first time we published for Lori. And I'm going to do that same thing. Put that on there. And if you align it perfectly and pin, now I can tell you if you do not pin, you're not going to get these results. It's extra work, but I messed with this block quite a bit Friday night to figure out the easiest way to get this to work. Because if you're just putting a corner square and it doesn't have all these seams, it's going to be a lot easier, but these seams are pretty bumpy and they're going to kind of get in your way. And another thing is you could definitely use glue on this, the seam align glue, because I'm not going to save the scraps. I am going to show you how to do that on one of my smaller pieces, but you definitely could use seam align glue. I'm trying to think of what company it's by. Oh, Acorn Precision is the one I use, sorry. So I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to stitch directly on the line and I'm going to move my pins out later. Trim a 1/4 inch away. And if you wanted to, that's a 1/4 inch. You could go a little bit over, a little bit to the left and do a little bit less because of that bulk, but I just did a 1/4 inch. I guess the key part of this is you have to remember all your little cheats. And so that's kind of why I keep the notes too, because I will forget next time if I don't have it written down. So you're going to set your seam. And I'm definitely using a clapper when I get to this point. So a clapper is a piece of wood and the heat absorbs into the wood and it flattens your block. So from here, I'm going to, it's 3 by 5.5. So I'm going to get a 5.5 inch square ruler. And I'm going to show you how you trim it down. So hopefully I don't have to trim anything on these 3 sides, but we'll see. Okay. So basically, do you think we could zoom in? Perfect. Okay. So basically, that needs to be a 1/4 inch away. So that line right there on the Creative Grids ruler needs to hit that 1/4 inch. But your 3 inch line and your 3 inch line need to hit right there. So you get, and then look, you're just going to be trimming just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit comes off. Flip it around. And it comes out exactly 3 by 5.5. And also the very center of the Creative Grids ruler hits at that white line right there. So this one didn't really, nothing really came off those sides. So, do you guys think I'm crazy because I do this? I mean, I kind of think I am. It's like I feel like it's like the perfection to get the perfect quilt blocks, which is what gives me beautiful quilts. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like I could have made 2 quilts in the time it takes 1. But the challenge is what I really enjoy, because if I just did everything the same way, I think I would get bored. And really, the best part for me is always cutting the quilt. I love the just thinking about what I need to do, writing that out, figuring it out. It's just like a little mental challenge. Okay. So now we have 4 of those. Yay! Okay, now we're gonna go to, let's see, so I'll show you this. Okay, so these 4 are gonna go right here. Fun, right? So now we need to make, these are our bigger flying geese. You need to make these. Now, anything small like this, you can either use foundation paper. The reason I'm not using foundation paper or the Eleanor Burns method, we do have a great video on 5 ways to make flying geese, and it's a great resource for you. I wish I would have had those methods years ago when I started. But because I'm doing scrappy, those don't work. So that's why I'm not doing those methods. So I'm gonna take, you need 4 per block. So I'm gonna take my fabric bees, and I'm gonna take 8 fabric U's. Let's see. And these I just cut the exact size, I think. Yeah, I cut these the exact size, so I didn't do anything different here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's hard to keep the stacks. I'm gonna draw a line from corner to corner. And you could use the Cluck Cluck Sew seam align tape. You could use the Lori Holt seam guide if you don't want to draw the lines. I just feel like I get more accurate results when I draw the lines. I am using friction pin because it presses open. I mean, because it disappears with heat. Now, one question I know you guys are asking is, why am I not pressing open? And I decided that maybe I should follow a pattern for once in my life and stop changing everything. So since I changed all of the other stuff, I figured I better just follow the pattern. Now this is where the glue is really important. Okay. And I'm gonna actually put the glue on this and let it sit here and go to another step so that you can see how well it holds. Now I put 3 dots of glue. I'm gonna let that sit there. And I make sure it's perfectly on that edge where it needs to be. If it's not gonna come out right. But I do get better results if you let it sit and dry. And I'm probably using a little bit too much glue. Now, if you use the glue, you cannot save your scraps, but I mean, I'm already going really scrappy here. I don't know that I need to do anything else scrappy. So I'm just gonna let that sit, and I'm gonna come back to that step so that it'll dry. I'm gonna skip to the 4 patch. For the 4 patch, you need fabric V's and fabric C's. Okay, but you see that that's where kind of everything's cut in the same order. So if I just move around my pieces, nothing will touch. Now I only need 4 of these, but I'm just gonna start with the stack so when I'm at the machine I have options. So I'm gonna sew 1 seam and stop, 1 seam, stop 4 times because I need 4 per block. Now these are cut bigger. And I'm going to show you something really cool that you can use. These are supposed to be cut 1 3/4. I cut them 2 inches. And I kept notes so that I would remember what I did. I'm going to show you the coolest thing ever on how to get the corners of your block right here to be exact. And it's a really cool thing that I wish I had done years ago. So I'm going to go sew these real quick. And you'll notice I'm not pinning. And I'm not pinning because I'm going to trim down so I don't have to pin. Oh, oops. Switch feet. So that's 1 unit. Units. And my thread come undone. Now this machine does have a needle threader, but I haven't had much success with it. So I'm going to go back over this previous seam just to keep the chain together. And then since I started, there's a little extra thread. I'm going to cut that off. So from here, I'm going to set my seams, and then I'm going to show you how the clapper is used at home. I'm going to press toward the dark, and how, because on camera it's really hard to show you, but for the clapper to work, you've got to let it sit there. Yes, I know the iron should not sit on the board like that, but it's a habit that I have. So I'm going to let that sit there and dry. I mean, it's not wet, so it's not really drying, but it's just not going to move anywhere. And then these, now it's not going to move. because it's dry. So while the clapper is making those seams flatter, I will start making these flying geese. Trim these. These we're going to press toward the dark. Set your seam, same thing, I know, over and over. Don't burn yourself. I do tend to layer my fabrics on top of one another just to keep the heat going. Now it's really hot. I'm going to move that clapper over there, and now I'm going to sew these together. Oops, where'd that come from? That's funny. So then what I'm going to do is just pin right in the center. Now I'm not going to pin the front and the back because you're going to see I'm going to trim down. So all I need is this center seam to nest. And then when I come back, I'll get these and add the next side to that. Set your seam. This one doesn't matter which way you press, either way, because when you flip it over, it's the same on the other side. So whether you flip it there or there, it's the same, doesn't matter. I'll put the clapper on that. And then we're going to come back to this step and add the corner square to the flying geese. And I do always just lay it out first to make sure I've got it in the right spot. Now this time I don't have time to wait for the glue to dry because I don't have another step I can do past this. So I'm going to just sew, but that's just if you're doing things in mass production, I guess. You could also just pin. And I do keep changing my foot. It's what I do at home. I just like to use these 2 feet. And also one thing is, you notice I'm just working on one block. I've saved all the other fabrics to the side, and I'm going to talk about that later. But just sometimes when you cut a quilt, just cutting one section at a time is good. Okay, so now we're going to assemble the center star. I'm just going to put those kind of on the edge. Now I'm going to move these just because I don't want that blue touching, but you're going to notice when your block is together, stuff is going to touch even though you plan it not to. Like in this block, these yellows touch, and then these two ended up being next to each other. Even though I planned and tried to not do that, it's going to happen. Fabric C's, so my last fabric C's go here. Now they're bigger. Oh, looky there. And fabric X, which I cut the same size. So here, I'll try to do a color that's not in there already, and that this kind of color is not in there, so I'm going to put that there. Okay, now this is something I do all the time. If I'm making a block like this, cut your outer square 1/4 inch bigger, and I'm going to show you, because then when you finish your block, these are going to be 45-degree angles. 90, oh my gosh, we got to write it on the script. I don't know geometry. I actually did really good. What'd you say? Which one is 90? Oh my gosh. So it's going to give you a 90-inch perfect angle. And it's not going to be dipped in a little bit. So we're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam, press, and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam, press. So I'm showing you a ton of tips. You can pick and choose which ones. So when you're putting that together, you line up the bottom and you leave the top hanging over. And I'm not pinning because I'm going to trim down and it's going to come out perfect. So when you look at this, your extra is at the top and the bottom, and these seams are lined up. I'm going to press according to the pattern. I'm going to cut these apart just because I don't like those. If you leave that there, it kind of, if you leave the stitch there, it kind of will pull when you're adding. So then when I go to do this, you add it like that, so the top is overhanging. This one I'll probably pin. And then that is overhanging. Press according to the pattern. It's hot. And here, hopefully I haven't chopped off those seams, and I haven't. And here, I'm gonna put those right sides together, pin, and then when I go, all I have to do is sew 2 seams. We're getting kind of maybe in the middle of the block. I know this one is a little bit complicated, but I think, you know, just showing you stuff gives you tips throughout. Now, if this was going to be too much into this seam over here, I wouldn't do that. And, you know, you guys could comment and let me know what scrappy pattern, what scrappy fabric you would put with this pattern. So, let's see. I don't know why my iron is doing that. It just does that from time to time. So here, you want it nice and flat. And this is where I would leave the clapper. I don't have time to do that today, but this is where the clapper is going to really make a big difference. Okay, so this should measure 5.5 by 5.5. It tells me that in the pattern. Now, a long time ago, when I first started, and I was doing this little trick of making things bigger, I would do this. It's kind of hard to see. I would kind of do this and then cut around, and that just didn't give me the best results. So what I have found the best results are is to line up the ruler on a seam. Make sure you're 1/4 inch away from those points and trim. Keep doing that, but as you go, then you line up at the top. So it's perfectly at the top and you go across. Just make sure you're not chopping off any seams. So that is how I get the best results. And when you take that and you put the 5.5 on top, it's almost 5.5. But now, you said 90 degrees? So those are 90 degrees perfectly. And nothing is, you know, if you notice sometimes when you sew, it won't be as pretty as that. So yay, pretty block. Now we're going to start assembling the block. We're almost done. Now one thing I noticed is I've got a lot of yellow at the bottom of these. But that's okay, it just happened that way. And like I said, she has this scrappy background, so I'm just doing okay, so I don't want as much yellow in the center. And I don't want that because that's touching that. Then I'm going to step back a little bit and just look at it to see. Now, like I showed you, you're going to have stuff that touches. There's no way to avoid it. Like these two pinks are together. I mean, you could move it, but in the end, is it going to really matter? Probably not. Now, you can see that's 3. This is 4. Or this is 3.5. I don't remember. Yeah, that's 3, and this is 3.5. So 1/2 inch bigger. Now what you want to do is make sure your dark is right in that point. Oh wait, I'm about to make a mistake. Woo! No, I'm not gonna make a mistake. I just caught myself. Okay. This is supposed to be 3 inches. I need to trim it, but I'm only gonna trim these sides because I want that to overhang. So I can trim it and get that perfect edge. So I'm gonna look at the fabric that I cut. It was supposed to be 1 3/4, so it needs to be 1.5 inch away. So from the edge. So I'm gonna leave this here. And I'm gonna just cut right there. So 1.5 inches away. So I just put that on the ruler. Any ruler, cut that away. And then put it back. And this is one of those things that, you know, you gotta make a note so you don't forget. I was looking at it thinking, that looks a little too fat. And that's why I laid them out first, so I would know which side to cut. And just use the lines on the ruler on this seam so that it's not crooked. Okay, now that looks better. And you're still gonna have a tiny bit to trim off. So I'm just gonna sew. I'm gonna pin as I go. Well, I guess I could pin it here. There's no seams to line up, which is nice. And the top is gonna overhang, just like I showed you, because we're gonna trim that off. Now this won't have anything that overhangs. I kind of just make it where the outside overhangs. And here, nothing has to line up. So you just put it right sides together. And actually, it came out exact, so that's nice. Let's see. And then when we press, we're gonna press towards the flying geese, I think. Yes. So we're gonna sew that with a 1/4 inch seam. So I do keep it chained together because I don't want my pieces to move, and it won't get out of order if I do it this way. And I'm gonna cut these. And you can see those ended up close together. It's fine. In the end of the quilt, it will be totally fine. That kind of stuff used to drive me crazy, and then I just realized I had to get used to it. So you can see the block is coming out really nice. I'm not throwing it together. When I get in a bad mood or something and start just throwing a quilt together, my quilt, it just doesn't look as nice. It's not as pretty. So I do, you know, just make sure you cut accurately, because if you start off by cutting wrong, your whole quilt's going to be a hot mess. Okay. Oops. Now right there I could tell that I kind of got a little bit off on my seam, so I'm going to adjust it. I could just tell when I was sewing. So I'm going to do a poll, and you guys tell me, do you like seeing all this craziness, or would you rather me just sew a pattern like it's supposed to be? Now, obviously, if you have a quilt kit, you know, you might not have enough to do this. So you have to make sure before you start, you have enough to, that just looks funny right there. Guess it's fine. Okay, and now that I've got the chains together, all I have to do is pin. So super easy, just pin, sew the seams, and then we have this, and then we're gonna trim it, and then we're gonna do the outside, and then we're gonna trim again. So it does get a little crazy. I think Denise thinks I'm crazy, but this is the story of my life. Everything in my life is complicated. It really is. Like, I overcomplicate everything. Do the other side. And your seam should just lock in place if you've pressed according to the pattern. Like when you do it, it'll just stop. Okay, right there, for some reason, I didn't start all the way on the edge. So I'm going to fix that. So you can see that extra edge. And hopefully these points meet. And if I was at home, I would put several clappers together and let that sit. Okay, so same thing here. This is 10.5. I wouldn't put a 10.5 on top of this and cut. I'm going to use a straight edge. But on the next step, I am going to use a square ruler, and I'll explain why in a second. Why I do different on different things. the answer is because I like to complicate my life, but. So same thing, find a seam, put a line. Once you have that, use this. And you're just making sure you're not chopping off the flying geese. So this should be about 10.5, so we'll see. It's 10 3/8, and that was what mine was at home. 10 3/8. So I'm an 1/8 of an inch off, and that's okay. That's what happens. Now I'm going to, now at this point you can either do the prints where you put fabric L's and W's on the outside, or you put E's and W's. I'm gonna do the L and W. So basically I'm just gonna take from my fabric L stack, and I feel like this has a lot of yellow in it already. So I'm gonna try to do green here. So just pick and choose, and then W's on the outside. Let's do orange. And then I'm just gonna kind of look at that. Okay, I'm gonna move this out of the way. And then these reds touch, so I'm gonna, I need a different one now, sorry. I knew it, I was like, you're gonna take the board and I'm gonna change my mind. Let's do a yellow here. So I'm just kind of looking at it to make sure I like it. Okay. So these are cut 1/4 inch bigger. This is still 10.5 inches wide though. So I'm gonna sew these together, but what I do need to pin is right here. Those I don't need to pin. And I try to remember, okay, like when I put this back, the green is gonna be here and it's gonna be like orange, green, yellow, so that I put it back in the same order. But this definitely has to be pinned. And like I said, it's 10 3/8. So this is, I'm gonna leave it 10.5 and just work it in. I definitely would not trim down to 10 3/8 is what I'm saying. I mean, you could, but I just haven't had the best results with that. So see how there's like a give right there? I mean, you can see it's overlapping. You just pull it. Pin it. And then, like I said, oops, green. Orange, green, yellow. Orange, green, yellow. Just try to remember that. And so I'm going to sew all these seams. So then I remember orange, green, yellow. So these are cut bigger. So the W I cut at 1 3/4, and then I cut this at 1 3/4 by 10 1/2. So these are a 1/4 inch bigger, and you're gonna see when I trim down that I'm gonna have just barely enough to trim around. But this is at the point where, like before, I was just trimming to get it straight. At this point, I'm going to be trimming to get it exactly 12 1/2. And that's really important because the other blocks in the quilt, the log cabin style blocks, I'm going to do those the same way, where I cut those where they end up exactly 12 1/2. So when I put the quilt together, I won't have to worry about pulling and stretching seams. And I will say, I'd probably sew all, I think there's 13 blocks. I would sew all of these blocks and then stop. I would clean your machine, change your needle, cut the next one, you know, change your rotary blade, cut your next section, and then do your next section. And I'll show you my leftovers and how I have everything saved for the next step. And you can see that even though this was 10 3/8, the 10 1/2 worked. Okay, so here I am going to make it 12 1/2. So I'm going to take a Creative Grids ruler, and the reason I use these rulers is when I'm doing something like this, there's a white line right in the center. See those white lines? I'm going to hit those white lines here and here. So that's where I'm going to start, by putting it on there. And then I want to make sure I'm just about around the edge, it's about the right amount. Now, this is going to be a bigger seam because I'm trimming down. So really it should be 1 inch away. It is about 1 inch away. But you want it even all the way around. But the easiest way to do that is to follow this white line and make sure before you cut it's about even on each side. Now this is where I cut towards myself, but I do it at home. I don't want to move my ruler. and I didn't cut all the way correctly. Okay, so let's talk about this seam right here. Okay, that was cut at 1.5. So this technically should be 1.25 inch away, but it's not. It's going to be a little bit more. Yeah, see, it's like 1 5/8. No, 1 3/8. See, right there it's 1.25. Right there it's, so it's just a little bit bigger than 1.25 seam because I wanted to get it exactly 12.5. So we're gonna, I'm gonna show you the ones I made at home. And whatever brand ruler you use, just try to measure that center, whatever the center line is. So here's my blocks. And that's what I have so far. I'm gonna show you my fabric. So, like I told you, I only cut this part. I haven't cut the log cabin. So this is what's left over, and I started with four backgrounds. So here's what's left over. Now I made some mistakes in the blue. I started with the blue. So I have a lot less left over from the blue because, like I showed you, I made a couple of these, so I do have a little bit less of the blue. But these are my backgrounds that are left over. I'm gonna use that in the next block. And then this is the leftover from the fat quarters I cut. So I tried to keep them about the same size, so I tried to cut them about the same. But like this one, this was the first one I made, so it has mistakes, so I've cut more. These 4 I didn't use yet. So these are 2 browns and 2 browns, and I just didn't use them. They're from the Fat Quarter Club. I might use them, I might not, but I just took those out just because I felt like it. So then I'll have this. Now to finish, the one thing I need to do is I'm gonna need more backgrounds to be able to keep going with these blocks. So I could use this bundle, which is the bee plaid backgrounds. It's actually got that one I just showed you. I could use this. I could use the Best Friends background bundle we have. I could use any kind of Lori Holt background, but I already have enough at home, so I'm not gonna worry about buying anything because I'm gonna use what I already have. But I'm gonna show you, since the club is sold out, what bundles I think would look good in this. Bee plaid fat quarter bundle. Calico Lori Holt stash bundle. So this one is the Calico collection, but it's just not all the SKUs. And then a lot of you probably already still have some of this. This is the Bee Patriotic Starter Bundle. This would look so good in this quilt. And this is the Bee Basics, sorry. And the Bee Basics would look great. But I'm just showing you so that you have alternatives if you didn't make it in the club and you wanted to. I can give you a peek to the next 2 months. So this is July. This is August. And this is September. And Lori hand selects all of these fabrics. So I've just mixed them all up and just took out the dark ones and kept everything else. But that's what's best about making a quilt. Find what you like, pick what you like, take out what you don't. We are going to be giving away, I'm going to give away 5 spangled patterns by Kim Diehl, and you can either pick to get a pattern mailed to you, or you can pick to have a PDF emailed to you, either one. And to enter to win, I really want you to let me know, do you like when I overcomplicate all this stuff and show you what I really do? Or do you want me to come on here and just show you the easiest way but not get you the most perfect results. So let me know, because I would like to know, and I can use that in future ones. I hope all of you have a great weekend. Remember, next week I'm going to be off, but you can just watch a previous video, and I'll see you again soon.